Support WrestleTalk!
Give us a subscribe.
Whoop that trick. More like whoop that turn.
No. Start again.
What I really wanted to do is I wanted to lead with the women's match because I wanted to do Lola Vice, more like Nola Vice.
Yeah, neither of these are working for me.
No?
No.
I thought that you might not enjoy the second one. No?
I'm trying. It's just not.
Vola, nice try there.
So what happened on this program of NXT?
But hold on. Welcome to the WrestleTalk Podcast review of NXT Vengeance Day. I'm Luco and DAD. This is the Professor Dan Layton. Please do press the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up as well. We've had a lot of new people entering the podcast realm.
We have.
Over the last weekend because you and I did our emergency SmackDown podcast.
Slightly big weekend in the wrestling world. That's why the puns aren't really vibing for me today.
We did it from home. We did it remote. So this might be some people's first experience of what this podcast normally looks like.
Yeah.
Which is this.
Yeah.
In our much nicer studio space that we're in.
Incidentally, my bed is over there in the corner. So it's the same thing.
We're still wearing pajama bottoms.
Yeah, absolutely.
Underneath the desk,
Yeah.
of course. Leave a comment down below with your thoughts on this pay-per-view, this PLE, I hate that term, of Vengeance Day. I don't know if I talked about this on the Royal Rumble live reactions, but for what I don't know the reason, PLE gives me the ick.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, it's not a pay-per-view.
No, it's not.
For some people, they are pay-per-views, but this one is not. It's a PLE. I think the reason is because it doesn't roll off the tongue.
No.
And because it sounds like a membership tier. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a premium live event, which means that like it's a little bit like a Tesco Club card. Do you know what I mean?
I feel it's almost, when you're talking about TKO or WBD, that's what it sounds like when I say like PLE.
It sounds like a business. And again, so does a PPV, I suppose. We would use that.
But I never say PPV. I say pay-per-view.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, because it's the same syllables.
Yeah. Like ultimately, it doesn't matter. But also, it is weird to say. It doesn't roll off the tongue.
I don't know why, but PLE, and it's written down a lot in Ultra Chats and stuff, but I always correct it to pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Even though that's not the correct way to say it, because the correct way to say it is PLE.
Yeah.
PLE just gives me the ick. Regardless, this was the NXT PLE for Vengeance Day, and it was a pretty good show, actually. I enjoyed this PLE. I enjoyed the show. You and I were talking about just as we were coming down here. I still haven't had that NXT show that's made me go like, yeah, this promotion is back.
Yeah.
I mean, ticket sales would certainly tell you that this promotion is back. Like, this had just under 4,000 people in the building for it. They were talking about how Stand and Deliver's looking to be the biggest show that NXT's ever done. I don't know if that includes things like Brooklyn. The Brooklyn shows back in the black and gold era. And, they're probably going back on the road again. Like,
they mentioned that during the show.
NXT is back, but I'm waiting for that show to be like, yeah, man, I've got to just tune into every single week. I haven't had that moment yet, but I did very much enjoy this.
It's still my sort of highlight. I look forward to them very much. Like it's Vengeance Day this week, and I'm very excited. I get that every single time. I had it with Deadline. I've got it with Stand and Deliver. There's another one along the way. So I'm very
Roadblock.
A Roadblock is that's a Tuesday show, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I'm like quite fond of them very much. It's more this year, like with Hard to Kill, with Rumble, with this. I'm like, all of these have been decent. I haven't had one that's made me go like, oh, I love this. I love this.
NXT for me is a lot like Collision. It's comfort viewing.
Yeah.
Like Collision is, you don't need to be sat down like fully paying attention to really get something out of Collision. It's a very enjoyable 2-hour wrestling show. I think NXT is the same thing for me. It's just a very enjoyable 2-hour wrestling show. There's some stuff I like on it, some stuff I don't like on it, but that's the same with Collision. Yeah, really. But this show was built around Trick Williams. And Trick Williams pulling double duty. He got his title shot against Ilya Dragunov. That was going to happen on this show, but that was also the finals of the Dusty Classic, which he and Mello made their ways to the finals of. So Trick was having to play double duty, and you had all of the tensions with him and Carmelo Hayes, what's going on with their relationship, who attacked Trick Williams, and all this sort of stuff, and how that's playing with Ilya Dragunov. And it built into the opening match, which was the finals of the Dusty Classic, then built into the main event, which was Trick against Dragunov for the NXT Championship. And after that match, Carmelo Hayes fully turned heel, attacked Trick Williams, laid him out, blamed him, blamed the fans for all of this happening. It was a really well-executed angle. I think the graphic was a bit cheap, because they did the corner graphic thing.
Traditional.
Yeah, it is traditional, but like when Trick Williams says, "I need you out in my corner," I was like, well, he's for sure turning heel later on tonight. As soon as they put the graphic, I was like, oh, he's definitely turning heel now. You can only do the graphic thing so many times before it becomes a parody of itself.
I think that's a bit extreme, personally. Parody of itself is a bit much, but it is that thing of, I mean, you knew it was coming, and the fans knew it was coming the second he stood behind Trick. There was And it wasn't just a case of we know what's coming. There's an audible, like, please don't do this. Like, we don't want this to happen. Like, oh no, don't do it, kind of energy from the crowd. So I don't think it was a parody of itself. But I did know, like, I knew it was coming.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I mean about it. Or telegraphs it slightly too much that something is coming. And I think that's what I mean about using it more than you need to. I think you should only really, like, when they
haven't really, though.
That's it. But like when they used it for Punk, like, that's the time you do that. When they first were doing it back in the day when they did it with Ciampa and Gargano.
When was the last time before this and before Punk that they did it?
I mean, it was a very good question. I mean, maybe it's just because it's come so soon after the Punk one.
I think it's more to do with that. I think it's a well-worn trope, but actually hasn't been used as often.
There you go. It's a well-worn trope, as opposed to it being a parody of itself. It's a well-worn trope. That's a nicer way to put it. But I thought it was executed really, really well. Yeah. And this crowd was so hot for this main event.
It was received really well.
Yeah,
it's one thing
because the crowd don't have it on screen. The crowd are just watching it happen in ring, but it's we as the home viewers are the ones who have it sort of telegraphed to us, but the audience there didn't. And I thought they reacted to it so well. And that shows how good that WWE and NXT have done in the presentation of Trick and Melo. Trick in particular. You and I talked about him from the Deadline show, and just like how over he has got from the guy who was, and that was the whole point of the video package before the match. He's the side character. He's the sidekick. He's the side piece to Carmelo Hayes. He's the actual star of this act. And he has not only stepped out of the shadow, he's taken over and he's become the shadow provider himself. And it's now Melo who feels like even though he's the one who's going up to the main roster. I thought the job they've done with Trick has been so great.
I mean, on SmackDown, just gone because it was overshadowed by the big news of the weekend. There were two really great moments. You had your Bayley situation. You also had Trick show up on SmackDown to sort of be like, "Oh, Carmelo, we got a match on Tuesday."
Was that Craig?
Wait, hang on.
That was 2 weeks ago, right?
2 weeks ago. Either way,
I was just thinking that I was like, I feel like I've gone mad here that I've forgotten that happened.
No. You are, I've been stupid on that one. Yeah. So point being, he showed up on SmackDown. And everyone went a bit nuts. Like, there was a massive reaction for him when you're outside of your NXT bubble, and you're still getting that reaction. That just goes to show.
I think that shows you again how good of a job WWE have done with this third era of NXT. The crossover between NXT and main roster it's like there's no real big difference there. There'd have been a period in time when NXT, because it was never promoted on the main roster and there wasn't as much of a crossover audience, that people would come out, NXT call-ups come out, get zero reaction because they have no idea who they are. We're now in an era where people are on NXT and people who are also watching Raw and SmackDown know who these guys are, who these guys and girls are. And it helps then the transition going into the main roster.
I think that's the key as well, is when it's one thing to execute this moment. It's one thing to do this turn. It's a whole other thing to have it received like that by the audience. And the audience really played their part in selling this as the ultimate betrayal kind of thing.
So the opening contest was Melo and Trick Williams versus the Wolf Dogs of Baron Corbin and Bron Breakker, who are an interesting little act. So there was a report on Fightful Select about them that, they were just put together as part of the Dusty Classic, and they were just going to be the group. They were the two guys that were just put together for this, but they got over and they've gelled so well together as a team that, Bron's going up to the main roster, so it sort of spells the end for this team, but I could certainly see them doing like Bron going back to NXT to do some tag team runs. Obviously they win the Dusty Classic here. I'd love to see them win the tag belts because they're a wickedly good team.
They are, and there's something about their style blending together. There was a lot of double team maneuvers. Their moves flow into each other. Their styles match. Their energy matches, especially this like renaissance of Baron Corbin that's been happening down in NXT. I'm looking at it. I'm like, why is this so hard to achieve on the main roster? Like, you have there's something. Maybe it's the television matches. Maybe it's different when you've got more travel in there as well, so you're not going at 100% every single night. It's like comparing a pay-per-view match to a Raw match kind of thing. I'm like, I look at certain tag matches on Raw and I'm like, where's the chemistry? Where's this kind of energy? It's why when the Creeds popped up and started doing their stuff, we were so, on the edge of our seat kind of thing. I loved everything about the way they were together. I also know that Braun is coming up to the main roster fairly soon, and I did see a lot of people be like, well, I wanted to take it off Gunther. I wanted to take the IC title off Gunther. For me, it's like, don't hotshot him too soon. Like, there's a fine line to walk between not going too soon, having a bit of patience, and then just missing your entry completely. You could call them both up and have them be a sort of tag team in the main roster situation as well. I don't know. Like, it's interesting.
I wonder if like the clamor to put Braun into that Gunther spot is because we've already done that with the Rumble. Like, we just gave him Brock's spot in the Rumble, so it's like, well, let's just keep on it. Like, let's do Braun versus Dominic Mysterio at Elimination Chamber, and then we'll do Braun versus Gunther at Mania. Not that I ever thought that Brock was ever going to win the IC title off of Gunther, but Braun doesn't need to win the IC title off of Gunther. But putting Braun into that place, I think it'd be a really good way to make him a star already.
He's only 26.
But he looked so. But it's all about capitalizing on heat as well. Like, he was so good in that Rumble. I think he was probably one of the standout performances in that Royal Rumble. I think that's a bit of the Rumble I remember the most, and will probably remember the most when looking back on it. That's the bit I remember. And I think it's capitalizing on that. It's not hot-shotting him into a position. It's building on the momentum that he's got. I feel that just putting him with Baron Corbin and sticking him into that tag division isn't capitalizing on the momentum you got from having a great run.
It was great.
Even though it was 5 minutes. That's the crazy thing about Braun in the Rumble. He was only in it for 5 minutes, but he had more impact in there than Shinsuke Nakamura, who was in it for 20 minutes.
And he looked amazing while doing it. Like, he looked I'm not anti Braun Breaker. I'm not anti him having a big run. I'm just sort of for the camp of, like, I think there's a few options for Gunther Mania. Is it necessary to do that right now, or can you just have a bit of a could you put him in the US title ladder match kind of thing and still I don't know I just look at the massive long career ahead of him and I'm like, if you do all now, is it too much too soon?
I think you could make that argument if he was facing Roman Reigns.
Right, sure.
Like, facing Gunther, I think it's not quite the same thing. I mean, he had a great moment that he shut Melo's, because Trick and Melo started out really hot, and he shut that down so brilliantly by doing this back suplex into a cutter, like flipped Melo over into the cutter. Great. He had it. This is how great Braun Breaker is. He had a real goofy ass spot where you're, from a kayfabe perspective, like, that makes zero sense as a spot. From a wrestling fan perspective, you're like, that's an amazing spot and I love it. Because he picked up Melo, threw him to Trick Williams. So Trick Williams had him in a fall-away slam position. And then he hit a German suplex on Trick Williams while Trick Williams is giving Melo a fall-away slam. Now, in the reality of the world, he was like, well, Trick would just put him down.
Yeah.
But because it's pro wrestling, you look past that. And that's the strength of Braun, is that he can do goofy spots like that. And you're not sitting there being like, well, in reality, they were just this. No, you're like, no, that's a wickedly fun spot.
In the reality of the world, you throw me into the ropes, I'm holding on to the ropes.
That's exactly it.
Stupid.
Well, no, apart from Braun in this one.
I mean, yeah.
He got thrown into the ropes and he got caught in the ropes.
But if you ever try and apply real world logic to a wrestling fight, like, it's like, well, hang on.
No, I think there's that, but there's goofy there are spots when you do like Roxanne Perez had it later on where she's doing a DDT and another move to a Russian leg sweep at the same time. They do it a lot on indie wrestling, and it's like there's a few too many steps to get something set up. But the ones who are really good at it make it look legit. And I think Braun's one of those people that makes it look legit. Roxanne Perez later on in the night makes that sort of spot look legit. The amount of indie shows that I've been to or I've watched on TV and on Fight and stuff where people have done those spots, but it takes them 3 minutes to get into it. It highlights how silly some of those spots can be. I thought this one was really, really great.
To your point, actually, there's something also within his character where when he does go into the ropes, and I get genuinely quite. I remember. Do you remember Enzo Amore?
The whiplash.
The whiplash where he ran into the ropes.
I think Simon Gotch shot on that in a. It's a joke. People will be. You remember there used to be a thumbnail of Simon Gotch shoots on Enzo Amore.
No.
It was like, for whatever reason, it was like the most recommended video for like about 3 years. Like, no matter what wrestling.
Sorry, I wasn't able to feed back to you just now.
No matter what wrestling YouTube video you picked on, in the corner there's a video that says Simon Gotch shoots on Enzo Amore.
God, I missed that. That one missed me entirely. I wish I could have met the moment for you just now. But no, it's those ropes are tight. That's quite a scary thing. So when Braun's head goes underneath it, there's an audible "oh" from the crowd, like everyone's, because that could be genuinely quite catastrophic.
And Melo had a slip on the ropes as well.
Yeah.
Apparently, they needed to be looked into afterwards, like the tightness of the ropes. Like Fightful Slate report, they were okay after the match, but they were banged up from it.
But what I was going to say is that when he's got this kind of energy of, maybe it's a part of the Steiner gene, I don't know, but that makes him go like, ah, and it's just going to run into that, and he didn't miss a beat with it, kind of thing. And it's because of his intensity, to your point, that fall away slam move just kind of works, and that's why he was so. It's the speed that he's got, the fact that when he spears someone, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up in a different zip code. Like,
he runs off the ropes. They said this at the Rumble, 23 miles an hour.
Jesus Christ.
23 miles an hour.
I don't walk at 0.23 miles an hour.
That is an insane level of speed. That's faster than most of the driving zones in London.
Bron Breaker just going around town and saying, "There's a primary school there, Bron. Go slower. You
Come
might
on,
take them
it's
out."
20 miles an hour around here, Bron. We're trying to get cleaner air, bud.
I would hate to see him run through one of those, like, you know, the primary school when they're at, like on a bus, they're like holding each other's reins or whatever, just plows through them all.
But the story of this was that Trick tweaked his knee during this match after he got the hot tag, and the finish of the match saw Carmelo Hayes save Trick Williams, pushed Trick out of the way, took the bullet, took the spear for Trick, and Bron pinned Melo for the win. And, you know, there was some like, oh man, what do we do this for? But it was like, no, I took the bullet for you because you've got to wrestle the Dragunov match later on in the night. And they had a backstage segment when the docs were checking up on them. And that was when Trick said, look, I know normally we would say, we got to stay in our own lanes and just, like, you know, go either way. But I do need my brother out there at ringside. And I was like, uh-oh. He's turning heel. Like, A, you ain't winning that belt, and B, your brother's turning heel on you tonight. And it built into our main event, which was Ilya Dragunov and Trick Williams. This was a hard-hitting affair because within about a minute of the match happening, Ilya Dragunov had a bloody nose and Trick Williams had a bloody mouth. And you know me, I think blood makes wrestling better. And this is one of those moments where I'm like, this made this match better.
I'm more of the camp where it's like, it's not that it makes it better or worse, but it certainly makes it more dramatic. And I think that the idea of, I think you can have an incredibly dramatic match with no blood whatsoever.
Absolutely.
And you know,
it adds to it.
If it serves the story right, then crack on. But there is something in this match where it's Dragunov's energy more than anything else for me. It's this kind of, it's almost like, they talk about the red mist descending on someone. I feel like he permanently exists in red mist. Like, he's always ready for a massive fight. He's a bit erratic. He kind of scares me a little bit. Like, I can't really get my head around Dragunov, and that's to his credit. So that it added an extra level of, like, ferocity to him.
Dragunov is someone I find so interesting in this era of NXT because he and Dragon Lee to an extent, and Dragon Lee sort of is already on the main roster, but Dragunov in particular feels like a throwback to original days NXT, which was about getting the best talent from around the world and putting on these incredible super shows. The sort of, you know, NXT takeover cards where you didn't even have to have stories. You would just be like, look, we've got this guy, we've got Adam Cole versus Ricochet. They don't need a story because it's Adam Cole versus Ricochet, and you can just put that on paper and people will want to see it. And we did, and it was always great. Dragunov does, like, you know, because there's Trick Williams, there's Obafemi, there's like all of these people who are just like, they're the green talent. Obafemi's had like 5 matches, but there's Dragunov who's like a tenured indie veteran, and it's just like he feels so out of place in all of this, but also feels within this world. I think he has managed to blend this better than some people have. I'm
curious about what his energy would be like on the main roster, because I do think there is something that could be a little bit of a hard sell about him. And it's not to diminish his talent in any way, because as I said, I really vibe with him, but there's something about it where it's almost like so much. He is so much before the bell has even rung.
Oh,
with all of this business and all.
He's super intense.
You're a little bit like, oh, I don't really know how to respond to that. You can't really be cheering along with him. You can't really be like, you know, singing his theme in the same way that a Nakamura or something like that, who had all of his quirks, was. It's interesting.
Because like Spinal Tap, where their amps go to 11, like he goes to 11.
He's at 96.
But he's always at 11. Yeah. Like he never turns any of the volume down. He starts his matches at 11 and remains at 11. Yeah. But still somehow feels like he pushes it further. And they just beat the tar out of each other. And that's kind of the brilliance of Dragunov. in ring. I've always loved Dragunov. Told the story of 1,000 times over, but when we saw him at the BT Sport event in January 2020, feels weird to say I went to a public event in 2020, but Dragunov was there, and he was a part of a 6-man tag, and he came out, and Ollie just lost his mind because he just Ollie always said he brings out this animalistic part that blokes have, and he brings that out of me. It just makes me just go because he's got that level of intensity, and he was really, really great out here. But there was a lot of Melo on the outside, Melo hyping up Trick. At one point, Melo got into Ilya Dragunov's face, and Dragunov pushed Hayes, and Hayes tripped over and collided with Williams' knee into the steel steps. So Williams was then even further at a disadvantage. But he still fired up at a H-bomb of his own for a really good near fall, and then hit the Trick knee. But while he's doing all of this, Melo's up on the apron, the referee's distracted, they all collide, the referee goes down, Melo goes down, Trick gets a visual pin, another referee runs in. So Trick won this match. He had this match won at one point, and in the end, a battle back and forth, and they both were going for their finishes at the same time. You got Trick, who was celebrating, hyping up to do the knee, and you had Dragunov the other corner doing Torpedo Moscow, and it was the Torpedo that won in the end. Hit his move, got the win. And yeah, I thought it was a very, very good match.
It was like that moment. It was like in an anime. I don't really watch a lot of anime, so I'm sorry to the people who do and are very cross with me. But
I can hear Ellis upstairs.
He's running downstairs.
He's running downstairs to correct you.
It's like that moment where two massive things hit and then the whole screen goes white. Do you know what I mean? It's like a giant explosion, like a flash. So when they're running at each other, that was that collision moment. I felt like it was like they really. I don't know who got it, and then you see who got it because it's Dragunov crawling over to get the pin. And it almost sucked all of the air out of the room, and not in a why have you made this choice way.
Absolutely.
In a very genuinely gutted, the fans were so bad. Like, Dragunov, in my view, has always been a sort of he's got the fan support behind him because he's just good kind of thing.
Yeah. Because he's Ilya Dragunov.
Yeah, but here, people didn't want to see him win. He was being booed, and he was leaning into it. And the thing about his character, which is effective, is that he doesn't have to do anything either way. He can just slot into the moment. If he's that level of intense when he's a bad guy, you can boo it. If he's that level of intense when he's a good guy, you can cheer it. Here, because the fans were so behind Trick, they were so genuinely gutted, and you could see it. You could see so many people being like, and it's that feeling of when. In a real sport, you're winning 2-1 and then you throw it away and you lose 3-2 in the last seconds.
This crowd was so hot for Trick Williams. They were desperate to see that boy raise that title, and that is incredible.
It's also quite rare.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean.
Days.
I think this past weekend with all of the Cody stuff, it has been a real eye-opening experience, I think, for some people to realize, oh, wow, yeah, Cody is over.
Yeah.
People really, really like Cody Rhodes. And I think that's been a real eye-opening moment for a few people to be like, man, okay, Cody is way over than I gave him credit for. I think it's the same thing with Trick here, is that he is so, this is a match that people can watch. If this is your first time watching NXT, you were like, oh, wow, this guy is over. Compared to everyone else that was on the show, so over.
Yeah. And so to genuinely, in this day and age where the fans, especially fans of NXT, especially fans going to an NXT PLE, sorry.
Ick.
They're
so less more attracted to you now than I was at the start of the show.
They're for them who are quite clued up on the business, and look at us, this is what we are. It's a very different era of being a fan now. For them to be genuinely buying into it in that way, I think is credit to the pair of them for putting this match together, but Trick especially for just being so cool that everyone wants to be him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. I think it is kind of rare in this day and age for someone to be this level of organically over, and he has just become organically over.
Yeah.
I've been really, really impressed with Trick since the rise, the stepping out of the shadow that he's done. I thought he was great in this main event, and then afterwards, they showed Ilya Dragunov, showed some replays. Dragunov was celebrating on the ramp. Cut to Melo and Trick in the ring, little corner graphic, and I was like, all right, here it comes. And Melo stepped behind him, hit him in the knee one more time, got a chair. and hit him in the knees with the chair several times over, sat on the chair, and mouthed off to him, mouthed off to the fans. Loads of referees came down. I thought it was a very well executed heel turn, made even better by this crowd.
Yeah, the fact that the crowd genuinely bought it, as I said, there was the like pleading for this not to happen. They knew it was happening the second he went behind him. We all knew. I think it had been bubbling under, as you said, the whole episode. But like the idea that this was the moment was genuinely quite crushing for the crowd, and then the crowd are really buying into it.
For like weeks on end, this has sort of been building up to it. You know what I mean? Like there was, because Fightful Select had this. So, like they were keeping this heel turn a secret backstage, and there's a few people in the comments under being like, we all knew it was coming because they've been telegraphing it on TV. But I think, again, to your point, that's how good this was, because the crowd did not want to see this happen, even though it's sort of been moving in that direction.
Yeah, and so like when he's mouthing off as he's walking up the aisle, it feels like genuine. This has worked for you. Good for you. I'm gonna do a thing here. I'm gonna compare it to Total Divas. And in a bit of Total Divas, there's a storyline where Natty has a heel turn. I remember Natalya having a heel turn against Naomi, and in the Total Diva storyline, they're talking about, I don't know, I'm like nervous how it's going to be received by the audience, and in the end, it is, and it means a lot to them when the work that they're done is received well. And it's this kind of thing where, for Carmelo Hayes to genuinely get good heel heat from a knowing crowd is quite tasty for him. It must have meant a lot when he walked back behind the curtain. That is a job well done.
Really is.
And I feel like this is the Stand and Deliver main event. I don't know how you get
Trick and Mello. You gotta think so, right?
I mean, I don't know how you get the title from.
You think for the title? I think you could just do this as a straight up singles match. This is when you don't need the title on. I don't know who you put as Dragunov's title contender. Like, who's the big name to do?
Well, my argument would be that somehow you get the title onto Hayes, and then Williams beats him for it, and then Hayes goes off to the main roster. I have it again earlier up in other areas of the show where I'm like, there used to be a formula for when the person was going to go up to the main roster, and now, because a lot of people stay and they have a second title reign or a third title reign, there's almost like no definitive end point. It feels like there's a real opportunity here to have a definitive end point for Carmelo Hayes to go and be a full-time main roster member.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that he's a babyface on the SmackDown roster.
That was going to be my question. Do you think that this transfers over to SmackDown? I think in a pre-Triple H era, I'd have said no. Like, it doesn't, because when you hit the main roster, you almost have a character reset anyway. There was very rare occasions when someone's character from NXT transferred over into the main roster, or the stories they were doing and the character progression that they'd had from their NXT run into the main roster. But I think now, where there's less of a blurred line between all of them, like NXT is just the third brand now. It is the developmental brand, but it's also the third brand, where you have Dominic Mysterio as the North American champion also appearing on Raw and SmackDown. You have Becky Lynch as the NXT Women's Champion appearing on Raw and on NXT, and Dragon Lee being on this show, and it was champion not that long ago for the North American Championship, while also being part of the SmackDown roster. There's more of like a moving parts to it. So I feel like it has to move into the SmackDown side of things. And they surely would have planned for that.
I'm going to keep him free. I probably wouldn't put him on SmackDown. I wouldn't have him on the show. I think he served a purpose. He neatly fit. It was a great introduction to him, to the wider crowd. I think for this next run of matches until Stand and Deliver, where I think you can have a really nice, neat ending, keep him off, and then maybe he can show up on the SmackDown after Mania.
So, because I don't know if a few people were pushing for this idea, the multi-man US title ladder match. People say like, put Melo in there. That says WrestleMania debut is in that match with Owens, Theory, Waller, and Logan Paul.
Poor guy's going to be knackered if you do that, though. Because you got, if Stand and Delivers in the morning and then in the evening he's got this, I don't know, it's a lot. I feel like...
Trick Williams did double duty on this show. What's he complaining about? There's a few hours gap between.
This is fair. No, I don't know. I like him, and I think he does very well in it. It's just, if in terms of, because it's gone over so well, I'm like, don't muddy the water. Like, for me, keep it pure, keep it on this track, because he's done such a good job of it.
Well, let us know what you think. Should you continue doing this heel turn for Melo, or do you kind of have him be a face on SmackDown but a heel on NXT?
Yeah.
Or do you kind of go your way? I don't mind that either, of keeping him off SmackDown for a bit, doing this Trick and Melo storyline, leading into the WrestleMania weekend, then you can almost have the little character reset for him, the SmackDown after Mania.
I just think for me, especially if you're straddling the fence, one foot either side of the face heel, if you have him as a face on SmackDown and a heel on NXT or whatever, you're doing half of both, rather than being able to go fully into one. And I think he showed in this moment, and then as he's walking up the aisle, he showed that if he goes fully in, he's going to be really effective in that role.
Looking at the rest of the show, after we had the Dusty Classic final, which was won by Bron Breakker and Baron Corbin. I really hope they do win the tag titles. Speaking of people being on the main roster, because like Bron is basically negotiating with Aldis and Pierce at the moment, while at the same time could be winning the NXT tag titles. Like that's remarkable, right? And I love that. We then had, in a no DQ match, Dijak versus Joe Gacy. Like, you know, Dijak's another one of those guys. I was like, I think you're from the wrong era of NXT here. Although he is, because he's, you know, coming out with his big boss man sunglasses. He does look a little bit. Yeah, and the nightstick, exactly. He sort of feels like a bit of a throwback character. Yeah. That's the thing that kind of keeps me sometimes at arm's length with NXT. There are some bits I really, really like. Then there are other bits, we'll get into it later with the family and OTM, where I'm like, oh, and this is a cartoon show. And there are sometimes where I'm looking at Dijak, I'm like, I loved, you know, Donovan Dijak. Yeah. But like you're a bit cartoony for me sometimes with your big unhappy face and your nightstick and whatnot. I know you weren't hugely into this match.
No.
But I had a little fun time with this.
It's funny that you say cartoony about Dijak, because I see what you're saying, but I buy him a whole lot more than I buy Gacy.
Joe Gacy,
Who feels to me, and I don't want to be disrespectful, but it feels a bit tenpenny to me. This idea of, I feel like I've seen Joe Gacy a lot. I feel like I could tune into any GCW show and see a version of Joe Gacy, and it's just here, it feels a bit cliche and cartoony. He's hanging upside down and being like that is whatever. This match did precisely nothing for me.
He put toys on the table that he was setting up, which feels almost like the next level of, you know, when you were on the independent scenes and you used to do tacks, then you moved to glass, and then actually the escalation of that was Lego pieces.
Which, like, I mean, as Vic quite rightly says, if you stand on one at 4 a.m. is a bitch.
Yeah,
nice.
it really hurts. Yeah. So I thought it's the next level of that, to put toy cars onto the table. I got a bit of a kick about it. It's a shame that Dijak sort of overshot the table somewhat.
I had a lot. Yeah, carry on.
But like, so it had like Dijak wanted to do a springboard and Gacy pushed him off and he leapt. But I mean, the story of this match was that Dijak beat up Gacy and kept hitting him with big moves, but Gacy kept standing back up and smiling about it and getting back into things, and was never really like on top for anything. Yeah. This was just Dijak would hit him with big moves and then pin him, and then Gacy would kick out, and then we'd just sort of move on, but Gacy would immediately get back up and would do his smiling thing. Even at the end, he hit a second Feast Your Eyes, and Gacy was smiling in the pin and was smiling after the match.
All right, Liv Morgan.
I quite enjoyed the spot where he put duct tape around his eyes.
Yeah, it was fun.
Like he duct tape around Dijak's eyes, and then Dijak's be like, which way did he go? Yeah. But still managed to hit Feast Your Eyes, but they couldn't find him for the pin. I thought this was wacky plunder nonsense, but you know, it was perfectly slotted second of the card.
Yeah, it was in the right place in the card, and I don't think it was bad. I just think it was nothing, and my time is precious. Give me something to... No, I'm being glib. For me, the issue is that I'm desensitized to it all. Like,
hardcore matches do little for you.
No. Effective hardcore matches do a lot for me. In this match, Dijak took a major bump from the ring all the way through a table onto a bunch of toys that we had sold as being that is actually quite painful. A little bits of plastic digging into you if you fall on through a table. That's painful. Like, we built all that. Less than a minute later, he's back in control.
Not only that, not only was he back in control, he got a near fall.
That's what I'm talking about.
He got back straight into the ring and got a near fall.
We're so desensitized to it.
It's less desensitized. It's more like that's bad plotting.
It's bad plotting, but I think it's both. I think we're desensitized to a lot of these kind of. Do you remember when MJF did that? I hate to bring this up every single time, but he did a Tope Suicida and he got a holy ass chant, and it's because we don't see it from him very often. Yeah. Whereas we see it from everyone else every 5 minutes. Like on SmackDown, Joaquin Wilde did the big giant launch thing, and it's like, because that worked one time, and they were like, "Do you want to go viral? Do you want to go viral?" And then they jumped, and it was like,
do you know what makes you go viral? Saying you're going to go viral.
Like,
planning to go viral.
I just like it. Really, there's an element of like we see it so often that it's the "We want tables" chant come to life. The match has begun and we're already chanting "We want tables."
It happened right at the start of this match.
Because it is, and I've been in the room when it's happened. It is fun. It is fun to see a human being crash through a table. It's a very satisfactory moment. However, we see it so often that we're not really buying into it. And then when you've got that combined with Joe Gacy doing his Mick Foley cosplay, like being like, "Oh, I like the pain. I'm smiling through the pain." It doesn't feel. There's nothing really for me to sink my teeth into. There's nothing really. I don't feel the pain for these guys. I just sort of see it. He jumped off the ring halfway across the thing, through a table onto some toys. That should be painful, right? These things should be painful. When they both whipped out their like sticks at the beginning and they're going to have essentially have a sword fight, a little bit of swashbuckling, I was like, "Oh, here we go. This is fun. I like this." And I was really genuinely looking forward to it. So I don't mean to I feel like I'm being really harsh on Joe Gacy. John Gracie.
Or John Gracie.
I feel like I'm being really harsh, and I don't mean to be, but like it just doesn't. There's no reaction to any of this because I see it so often and it hasn't built, and it isn't being built within the match to mean something. So why should I care?
I enjoyed this way more than the next match.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. But in between that, we also had a running series of skits with Chase U selling their calendar. I have seen some people online who have been very upset about this calendar, and I've got no skin in the game of whether or not people should be offended by this calendar.
What are they upset about?
Well, because it's selling a calendar of sexy ladies, and it's sort of 2024, and I think of some people it was like, I think we're past the era of like I used to get sexy calendars of sexy ladies.
The Divas calendars.
Yeah, I used to get Lucy Pinder calendars.
That scans so hard
because I was in my early 20s.
You were a Pinder, not a Marsh kind of guy. I understand, yeah.
I used to have posters of Jordan on my wall when I was a teenager, because that was the sort of era that we were in. Selling a sexy calendar of sexy ladies, it seems a bit sort of like out of place in 2024. My bigger issue with it is you've started selling a calendar in February. You've already missed a calendar charts January to December.
Yeah.
We're only at the start of February. I appreciate that, but it's not going on sale until today.
I have looked at the calendar. I have seen.
You perv.
Well, I have. They're not. It's not the most. There are largest promo shots. I'll be honest with you. It's not the sexiest calendar that I've ever seen. But like, if you go, I think. You know me and my feminist agenda.
Oh, well, that's all I ever hear about you on a bloody feminist agenda, Dan. It permeates every podcast that we do together.
Woke. But I don't see a massive issue with this, to be completely honest with you. All you have to do, the key issue is that it's February. If it were December and we'd be looking around at all the calendars, I could present you with 6 here are some hot men in kilts calendars, or like it's the Diet Coke of it all. And it is different because gender things is different. It's a very nuanced and complicated argument, and I don't really think we should be having it on Wrestling Podcast because I've learnt my lessons. But
if I can then just interject, the thing that annoyed me more about these sentences is the terrible acting.
Oh, like, you don't go to NXT for Emmy-winning performance, do you?
You say that, but later on there were some pretty good performances in some of the backstage segments. But Christmas Day, Thea Hale is dreadful.
She's giving,
and the lad that was flirting with her, what's his name? Riley Osborne. I am trying not to swear. Go to some classes. Are you skipping these classes? Are you focusing so much on your in-ring work you're not going to any of your acting classes?
No, they're in their acting classes, but they're passing little notes. Do you like me? Yes, no, maybe.
Oh, it is bad.
It's giving Neighbours. It's giving Ramsey Street.
Don't you dare disrespect the greatness of Neighbours.
It is.
If anyone tried this on Neighbours, they'd have been kicked off that set.
It's giving Neighbours, and I like it. I like this stuff. It works for me. It's stupid soap opera nonsense.
We'll get onto that in a little bit, but up first, it was the Family versus OTM. They had some of those. We're going into this new production era, this post-Kevin Dunn era of WWE, and I think that's shown in sort of very full effect here. We've seen it on the main roster when Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne had their little coffee date. Yeah, and we had Thingio, the Party Girls, going to a nightclub.
Going to the world's deadest nightclub.
Yeah. And Piper Niven and Chelsea Green going to it. This felt like this feud is those video backstage scenes, the feud. There was even a moment here when the two lads from OTM were shown as children and then faded into them being now all grown up. This whole thing's a bit too cartoony for my liking. And then I thought the match itself was... It's a 6-man tag, a mixed gender 6-man tag. And it was 5 green as goose poop workers and Tony D'Angelo, who's very good.
Right. I don't think the match was, again, similar to the last one. It didn't give me anything. Like, I wasn't jumping out of my seat. I wasn't excited. I could feel my eyes wandering. That said, I really like the character work. Like the Rizzo character, she had that line before it. She was like, "My mother always taught me, fool me once, I'll break your face." That popped me. I thought it was quite funny. I'm into the idea of the family. The execution in ring, not so much. OTM feel. What's the word?
I don't know. I not dead on arrival because that's far too harsh a phrase to use. But like it feels like it's not
stock. They feel stock.
Stock's good. Yeah,
stock characters.
It feels like it's not going to get very far.
Yeah.
Like the family has a ceiling to it. Kind of like Alpha Academy has a bit of a ceiling to it of being the comedy group backstage. Mm-hmm. There's only so far you can get without. Though if you're as good as Chad Gable, you can push past those boundaries and get that excellent match out of I was about to say that excellent match out of Gunther, like Gunther's ever had a bad match, but like that an excellent match with Gunther. I do apologize.
Yeah, because Chad Gable had to try hard to have a good
God, he had to work extra hard to really make that Gunther lad look good. But I think the family have a similar thing. I think there's a ceiling. Even being called Tony D'Angelo, I think, has a ceiling to it, and your finishing being called Forget About It has a ceiling to it.
I mean, there's two arguments that I could make here. The interesting thoughts. One of them is every show has people with parts to play, and this was the whole thing that Triple H said to Cody that caused the beginning of AEW. Everyone has a part to play in the show, kind of thing. That I think there is value in a bit. Like Too Cool had one thing, and it was very valuable,
and it was super over
and incredibly successful, and it made the start of every show pop. Like if you watch 2000's Raw.
It's every
single week. Every week. Too Cool, do a dance, go home.
Like, they will go out there. Grandmaster Sexay has a 30-second match with Steve Blackman. Someone runs and causes a DQ. Doesn't matter because here comes Rikishi and they're going to do the dance.
Same thing with Enzo and Cass in a way. Like they came out, they did their speech, they did their thing, they went away. Now like the act itself was so over that the work in a way didn't matter. The other side of that coin, what I'm saying there is it doesn't have to be. It's not always a bad thing to have your character and be in it and that be it. Like that's not actually a negative. I don't think. There's also not to say that like you can't have your shtick and then play with it. Like the Outlaws within DX, they were not the main event of DX, but they were there and they served the purpose and they had benefits. Huh?
They sold more merch.
They sold more merch, but they were able to then play their part in the big stories when it was the DX Express, when it was like all that the Van Helmsley regime. They were able to play a part in that. So like there's certainly an argument to be made that if you're asking for every single person to have layers at every level of the roster, it's like. I don't know, but
I'm not saying that you need to have layers at every level because I agree with you, and I think that's an excellent point that you do need to have a broad spectrum, and you do need to have lower mid carders. That's kind of the great thing about Too Cool is that they were a lower mid card / mid card act. You know, they won the tag titles on one occasion, but they were opening of the show, opening of the pay-per-view, come out, do the dance, and everyone goes home, or even starts the show happy. I'm not saying that every character needs to be able to be pushed into the main event, but I don't like how cartoony some of this is because I feel like it feels out of place with other acts in there. Like Too Cool felt of an era and felt within like the same world as everyone else, whereas these two groups do feel like they have stepped in from it. Do you know what these two feel like? And this is going to sound fairly bad on one. They're 2.0.
Oh, okay.
Like that's what these two groups feel. They're 2.0, and I feel like this is a brand that's trying to move on from 2.0. And some of the people that were in that 2.0 era have excelled in the new version of NXT, but these still feel very 2.0.
I'm not there, but I can see why you would be.
We then had Lyra Valkyria versus Roxanne Perez for the Women's Championship. We also had a backstage segment with Kiana James and Izzy Dame chatting about the women's division, looking to take out Kalani Jordan.
Good God, I missed the summertime. They were sat in a garden. They're like, it was sunny. I walked in today and it was grey as anything.
Yeah.
I've got very, very strong seasonal affective disorder at this moment in time.
Spring's coming soon.
Oh, it better. It better. Otherwise, I'm off to Florida.
I went to
it's horrible politics.
I went for a nice walk around a National Trust property because because I'm middle-aged and a dad these days.
Fabulous.
And there was a few signs. One of my fellow dad friends said to his daughter, "Spring is coming soon. You can see the first signs of it here." And I was like, "Yeah, spring is coming. We can get out of winter soon enough."
I want to live in a place where there are no seasons. I want it to be perma summer.
So we had Lyra Valkyria versus Roxanne Perez for the NXT Women's Championship. I thought these two were on fire.
Yeah,
in this match.
I really spoilers for the whole segment, but I really loved this because I got two different matches in one.
Favorite thing on the show. Mm-hmm. This was, I mean, there is a big old logic hole, and it made Lola Vice look like a bit of a dum dum. But I thought
I have a counter to that.
But as a whole, and I said you could make the argument, but I think as a whole, this was my favorite thing on the show by leaps and bounds. I would say I loved the mellow trick stuff at the end of the show in terms of the crowd reaction for it. But I thought in ring bell to bell, this was the best thing on the show. And like even just when it was the Lyra and Roxanne bit, when it was just the one-on-one match, thought they were really, really great. And the story is that Roxanne Perez is looking for that one-on-one match that she has been, she wanted since not even being beaten for that NXT Women's Championship. And finally she gets it here. She even has the match won. She hits the pop rock. She has the match won. And then in runs Lola Vice because she's cashing in her breakout tournament victory. And she's now made it a triple threat. So Roxanne screwed out of her one-on-one match. And then Lola Vice came in and kicked all sorts of ass in this. She was so good. I thought she was going to win the belt at one point. Like she was doing like incredible stuff in here. But Roxanne was making wicked comebacks. Lyra was getting her shots in there. She hit the Nightwish and Lola like broke it up, then tried to steal the pin, and Lyra had to push her off to break that up. Then Tatum Paxley came in, and now because it's no DQ because it's a triple threat, Roxanne Perez had the match won a second time. She hit the pop rocks, but Tatum Paxley gets in and she tried to brawl with Lola Vice, but unfortunately missed and got into Roxanne instead. Lyra hit the Nightwish for the win. I thought it was great. Really, really good. Roxanne had the match won twice. Not only was she screwed out of it the first time by her singles match becoming a triple threat, she got screwed out of it by outside interference. Really, really great.
Yeah, it was like we got two different matches in one, as I was saying. The first one was this sort of like really nice little bit of technical back and forth. They had great chemistry together. The moves were tight. It was really good. I also love, as a production note, I love when they're walking backstage towards the ring and you got those beats playing. Like that for me harks right the way back to the Attitude Era. Like that makes it makes things feel big time. You could have Hornswoggle walking down and I'd still be like, oh, hang on, what's going on here? Like, it really works for me. And then, the match that they had together was really good. I loved the level of like storytelling and intrigue where you've got two people here, one of whom never lost this belt, and there's an injustice in her. Even if, like, Wade Barrett mentioned it, like he was injured, so he got stripped of the Intercontinental title. That's fair. That's what happens. You got injured. You can't defend the belt. You are stripped of it. But it's frustrating because you've never lost it, and and you feel like everyone else is a pretender. You want to prove yourself. On the other hand, you've got someone who, never beat Roxanne Perez for this belt. There's a break in the line of this belt. She did beat for it though. Becky Lynch. She beat the man. She beat the biggest star in women's wrestling to win that belt. So she's got something to prove still as well. Like it was this perfect little clash of the pair of them, and they really delivered in the ring. So you already have that intrigue when then Lola Vice comes out and she inserts herself into that match, and you're like, well, hang on, there's a real potential here for both of these women with a point to prove to get screwed out of their moment. Like, whether Lyra Valkyria loses, it's like, well, I wasn't ready for you. And Roxanne is like, well, hang on, I still haven't lost kind of thing. Or if Roxanne gets pinned, it's like, yeah, well, I didn't get pinned by the champion if Lola wants to be the one to do that kind of thing. It was a really interesting extra little wrinkle in the story. One or both of these women are going to end up hard done by. It was nice little seasoning on top of it. And I actually really, you said it made Lola, or there's an argument to be made.
The argument to be made that it made Lola look like a dum-dum because if you can just cash this in any one time, why did you cash in the middle of a match and make it a three-way when you could have cashed it in after the match when two people have been beaten down and Money in the Bank cash in it, essentially. Yeah. As opposed to doing, the argument is you can't recapture that Seth magic.
Yeah. I see that argument, and my response to it is very simply that this is the NXT breakout winner. She's not on the main roster with Money in the Bank. She's in developmental with her breakout win. She hasn't had that run yet. She's still a newbie, so she's hyped up on her energy and her and she's so trusting in her own source and believing her own hype that she does it, and it is a mistake. Like, and it's one of those things where it's like, you kind of messed that up there, I'm afraid. Like, that was a bit stupid of you. She can afford to be a bit stupid because she's in developmental. Like, the character can afford to make stupid choices without it being like banter you off. And I think because she's not ready yet, and it would have, I think a different scenario would have shoehorned her in. She's not ready for the championship yet. She's not. Whereas in the men's area, you've got the mid-card title. The women's division doesn't have that. It doesn't even have tag belts on NXT. There's kind of something great. There's something great about her energy. I think she's really, really fun. I think the character is really entertaining. She's got work to do in terms of in-ring, and she showed here that she's got heaps of potential. So I thought you can get away with having her make a boo-boo.
I think you are correct in there, and I think you can make that argument really, really well if the commentary were sort of putting that over as like, this is a mistake, but they never highlighted that this was an error or a tactical error in cashing in to make it a three-way. But I think you can make a very good, compelling character arguments that it was just a character mistake here. But honestly, the reports are as well is that she was very praised coming out of it. All three of them were.
Yeah.
My favorite match on the show. By leaps and bounds, I thought this was the best bell-to-bell in-ring action on the entire card.
My only criticism is that I don't know how much more Roxanne can get done in NXT. Like, how much
heel turn.
I suppose, but for me, it's pretty clear that Tatum Paxley is the heel here. She's the sort of
depends on if you want to how you want to read the attack that she does. An unjustified attack from Roxanne Perez. I've seen a few people suggest that this could be leading to like maybe that's how you continue this Roxanne character is you do give her the heel turn, screwed out twice in a match, and that turns her into a baddie who just will now do whatever she can to win that title back. But I also agree with you that she's one of those people, kind of like we used to say about Tiffany Stratton, wasting away in NXT. Like, you do not need to be here. You should already be on the main roster.
The only part of me that has a little reservation is that I don't want her to get lost in the shuffle because there's not that level of recycling going on the main roster.
Look at the creeds.
Yeah, kind of. Like, there's an element where I'm like, this is why I'm actually kind of, it would require a massive wholesale change in the industry. But I like the idea of there being a cycling off season. Like with the territories, I've kind of done my thing over here. I'm going to go over here. Now I'm going to go over here. Where like, Kevin Owens, we haven't got anything for you from April to June. Have a couple months off. Go and rest yourself. Go and like get your mental health back. Like, have a good break. Come back. People will be well excited to see you. What happened with Drew McIntyre? And I don't know what really, removing any of the contract talks and actually this is what this is about from it. When Drew McIntyre went away for a bit after Mania, and then came back at Money in the Bank, people were excited to see him.
Can't miss him if you're never there.
Exactly. So there's almost something to be said, especially
you're always there. For
a roster this big with a developmental territory, with people who are ready to move on from developmental. There's something to be said for like, all right, this is your cycle. You can be part of cycle C. And then when you've had a good run, cycle A comes back in, and cycle B, and then it's your turn for an off season. And do you know what I mean? Like, there's something interesting in that. I don't know how much more Roxanne can learn.
Oh yeah, well that's the thing is with NXT still being that developmental thing is like there are people there who are looking to learn and do need to learn, and that is what you should have from a developmental brand. And then there are some people like Roxanne Perez or Dijak or Ilya Dragunov or in some cases Trick Williams who are like, yeah, I think you've learned everything you can in developmental. I think you can just go to the next level of your WWE career. But yeah, I overall I thought this was fantastic.
Yeah.
I thought it was really, really great. Also, I'm going to give huge props to Lyra's promo at the start of this match. You kind of alluded to it earlier. And I liked this promo anyway because it was about putting over Roxanne Perez while also putting yourself over and therefore making both of you look great so that once you beat them or lose to it, you haven't lost to someone, but you have beaten someone. That great promo work. And it's a real stark contrast to what Seth and Roman did regarding their titles, which I still irks me really, really heavily. This is what promos are supposed to do. Promos are supposed to make your opponent look great and make yourself look great. Because if you make your opponent look like an idiot, then you beat them, what did you get from that? You beat an idiot. Who cares? But if you're putting someone over and being like, you've done this, you've done this, you've done this, you've done this, but I'm going to be the person that beats you, you've then beaten a great person. And you get a lot out of that. I thought it was an awesome promo. I think I wanted to mention as well is that I've got a real issue with Americans calling it Legos. It's called Lego. Lego is the plural already. There's no such thing as Legos.
Well, what if I've got two things I bought from the Lego shop? I've got this.
Then you bought Lego.
These are my Legos.
No, they're not. They're your Lego because Lego is the plural.
But what if I have one over here that I bought in the Eastern Conference and one I bought over here?
Oh, Daniel, you little bitch. I love it.
Hello to the new people who subscribed who may not know my history with the word final.
And the last match, the final match we get to talk about, though not the final match on this card, was Opa Femi versus Dragon Lee for the North American Championship. Very, pretty basic, big versus little match. I quite enjoyed Femi biting the ropes to get out of the octopus stretch. I thought that was quite fun. And him chopping Lee out of midair, choke slamming him into the announcer's chair, and he hit the pop-up powerbomb for the win. For a guy who's had 5 matches, I've seen way worse.
Yeah, there is something. It's the big versus little. It's the David Goliath. It's the power versus speed. It's all of that. I think when you say I've seen a lot worse, I think the crucial part is he knows who he is. He knows what he's here to do, and yeah, he's still learning. But when you're in the ring with someone like Dragon Lee, who's sort of able to fly around and sleight of hand distract in a way from anything that might go slightly wrong, you can afford to look $1 million. And I think there's something as well in the commentary. Wade Barrett was talking about being at the Rumble and having people go "What is that Opa Femi guy? He's a big guy. He's
big
intense."
dude.
That all of that serves to put you over as well. I think he just knows what his is. He knows how to position himself. He knows how to hold himself on the roster. It's really working, this character. 5 matches, good for you.
Absolutely good for you.
Yeah.
And then the last thing to talk about is Lexis King. Thought he would join the bad acting class and do some more bad acting with the Chase U lot. Got into a fight with Riley Osborne. They're having a match on NXT. And we also had a Edris Safoni and Malik Blade. This is the performance I actually quite enjoy, where they were talking about positive reinforcements and stuff. And I can't remember, what do you call them? Affirmations.
Yeah.
Go through this. And Nathan Fraser and Axiom walked in to set up a tag match. Thought some of those performances were quite fun. I do come to NXT for some good backstage segments. Yeah. Thank you very much, Dan.
You've missed one other thing to talk about, which was that there was a promo for something mysterious.
Oh, yes, we did skip over that, didn't we? That was... it was just before the Oba Femi match, yes, yeah. Which many are thinking to be Julia.
Well, it was about... Basically, the promo was just text on a screen, white text, black screen, and it simply said, man has 3 faces. The one you show to the world, the one you show to your family, and then the one you don't show anybody, and that's the real face. And that's a Japanese
proverb,
whatever the phrase is. Could be Julia. Could be Okada on his way to join Chase U. Could be...
Imagine if Okada goes to NXT.
Funny.
I mean, I don't think it would be then.
No.
I'm even someone who quite likes the... God, you imagine this crazy world that we'd live in. You can see this thing. If Okada went to NXT, it might be the dumbest thing this company has ever done, who have done numerous dumb things. It'd be the dumbest. Sending Julia to NXT is fairly dumb in of itself.
Yeah.
But Okada would be next level thick.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's just evil. In New Japan.
You think evil's going to come across?
Because if the last face is evil, and it's got the word evil in it, maybe it's evil.
I mean, that's someone you probably do want to send to NXT.
No, I just thought it was interesting that was there, and then it was sort of moved on quite swiftly from the fact that it's a Japanese proverb. Feels very loaded.
I feel like it's probably Julia.
Yeah.
Which is interesting as well, because the reports of Julia, she's finishing up now with Stardom. Also, that's in the news as well with Rossi going, which is such an interesting. I think there's going to be a lot coming out about this Rossi situation, his relationship with WWE, whether or not he's going to go to NXT. Apparently, there are some people in WWE who are a bit anti-Rossi.
I'm very blind to all of this.
And don't want him coming in. And I know Tony Khan has clearly had his issues with him because he's wanted to book Stardom talent, and Rossi's always said no. and then they've tried to send talent across and it's never quite worked out. It's why we haven't had a lot of Stardom crossovers with Forbidden Door, apparently. I think there's going to be a lot coming out about this. Whether he goes to NXT or whether he starts his own promotion, which is the other thing. There's a lot of people very loyal to him, but like the Sakari Sane going back to WWE was very much part of Rossi going to be being fired from Bushi Road, because like in Bushi Road's own statement, he was poaching talent and, you know, was kind of screwing with their own contracts and stuff. I think there's going to be a lot coming out of that. So the Julia thing is obviously interesting on top of that. But we don't know for now. Like on Fightful Select, there's no, they couldn't get any confirmation or word on what this spooky promo was about.
Good. With all due respect to Fightful Select. Good.
For me, the more like moving on to our next thing, which was, you know, they come out and it's just like on to the next thing. It's the North American Championship match. When you had Lexis King fighting with Riley Osborne, they just fade. Like they literally fade to Ava in office talking about the success of NXT. I was like, that's a bad bit of editing there. That's a bad bit of production. But overall, I thought this was a good show. Yeah. I enjoyed this. Didn't enjoy it as much as Deadline, which I thought was like, I thought superb. But I thought this was a very good, like 3 out of 5 PLE. Yeah,
I had a lot of fun with it. It did the job, even with bits inside it that didn't do anything for me.
Yeah. So that's all we got time for on this edition of the podcast. We'll be back tomorrow, reviewing Monday Night Raw. What's on Raw? I can tell you what's on Raw.
Don't.
It's Cody Rhodes versus Shinsuke Nakamura in a bull rope match.
I thought I dreamt it.
They announced that on the old social media. We've also got, let's have a look. What's on WWE.com? I'd imagine we'll probably pivot away from the Rock thing that we did. If they're monitoring the situation, they may just, you know, rewrite some of what they did. Gunther is going to be having a celebration, I believe, because he's now past 600 days. I think that's all they've announced.
Oh. Well, there you go.
There was nothing on WWE.com anyway. Anyway, so we've got review Monday Night Raw tomorrow. I have no doubt this is going to be a big show after what happened on SmackDown. And I'm really looking forward to getting into it and chatting through that. We'll be live here on the WrestleTalk Podcast channel tomorrow, 3 p.m. GMT. And then we're back on Thursday, myself and Tempest, reviewing AEW Dynamite, which will be it's a stacked old show, that one. That's got the Sting and Darby tag title match. It is going to be a busy show on Dynamite. And then next Monday is the start of the new era of Mondays, as Dan and Tempest will be reviewing AEW Collision and SmackDown all together, unless, of course, something mad happens on SmackDown again this week. We have to do another emergency podcast.
You can see the preview of that show on Patreon, I believe. That's
can do, yes.
We shot a little pilot for it for last week's and sort of see how it might work, and that is available to those who might want to join Patreon. Have a little look.
Yeah, if you're curious on our thoughts on last week's episode of Collision, as well as last week's episode of the Go Home episode of SmackDown Before the Rumble, that is available over at patreon.com/WrestleTalk, along with loads of other goodies, including our near 4-hour review of Royal Rumble 2014, the first chapter of a new era of WrestleTalk Extra, where we're looking at the breakup of the Shield. Our next episode will be Extreme Rules, because we've already done WrestleMania 30 and Elimination Chamber 2014, but we will be talking about the matches that the Shield have from those shows. That's what we've got time for on this edition of the podcast. I've been Luke Owen, DAD. That has been Dan Layton. We'll see you tomorrow. Jam that jam.